welcome to Mommy Dentist and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Yum. Welcome back, everyone. Today, I have a returning guest who you all know and are familiar with. And if you're new here, if you're new to the MDIB podcast, welcome. I'm excited to have you here as a listener, and I'm excited to bring on Brittany Frazier. And for all of you who don't know Brittany, she is a financial planner at Cain and Associates. We call CWA, and she's also lectured for us, done many webinars, come to our live events. Brittany and her team are fully invested in MDIB, and they offer exceptional service. So thank you so much and welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Yum. I'm happy to be back.
Well, my pleasure. For, again, our guests today who don't know you, if you could just give us like a 60-second rundown of who you are and why they should be listening to you.
Absolutely. Like you said, I'm a financial planner and I'm a CPA. I started my career in one of the big four public accounting firms. And then after about 5 years, I joined Cain and started down the financial planning and wealth management track. If your listeners are not familiar with Cain, we work, our bread and butter is working with dentists, of which many are practice owners and other high net worth individuals in all 50 states, actually. And our primary goal is to help them get to their goals, optimize their businesses and their practices to achieve their goals. I'm also a mommy, like your listeners.
Yes.
I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, 2 boys, and then I have a 2-year-old daughter. So I was working as a mommy, like many of your dentists, and also trying to start a family. And I found myself facing certain challenges and kind of realized that the women was an interest of mine. So that's one of the areas of focus that I focus on. And when I connected with you years ago, I found this amazing community, and it matches up to a lot of the things that we're doing in our firm. From building up our female client base, making sure they have all the skills and tools and education that they need, creating female leaders within our firm, and just kind of creating an amazing community of women. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know that we're very much aligned in that way, and that's why our community really enjoys working with CWA and what you offer and how you, like you said, have a specific focus on dentists and how we practice and what our financial needs are. Now, our listeners are obviously going to be all over the mat, physically and financially, and they're in many different phases of their careers and family lives. Some are in the thick of things, some are on the tail end, some are just starting, and that could be in business or with their families and building their families. And for those who feel like they're starting from square one, little financial knowledge, what are, I guess, your most practical basics of financial planning that you recommend they focus on first?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think financial planning is for only people with a certain amount of money, or you have to start with investing. But honestly, I back it up and say it starts with confidence. You really don't have to know everything, but you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. So for your practice owners, it's understanding their business. What am I doing here? What does my cash flow look like? What's coming in? What's coming out? Even for your non-business owners as well, or your early career, understanding where is my cash flow, and are there things I could be doing differently to make that better or worse, while still serving my patients, while still kind of accomplishing all the things I need to at home as well. So understanding your cash flow, that is kind of square one.
Yeah. I just want to jump in there because I do have a lot of mommies, and the trajectory for our dentists that are listening, the usual trajectory is a very linear path, right? You go to school, dental school, if you specialize, residency, you come out, You might associate and then do your own thing. But I do want to put out there that the moms, especially, we have a different path, a lot of us, and we also have a lot of different options. And I want to recognize that because there is no right or wrong. If you're a female woman dentist, and on top of that, a mother. There's no right or wrong. There's no judgment. Some of you go straight into owning your own business, and some of you are like, it's not for me. I'm raising three, four children. I'm going to be an associate for the rest of my career. I enjoy coming to work 2 to 3 days a week. And that's my sweet spot because that's why I became a dentist, to be able to just have a career, but also raise my family. And so, again, I wanted to point that out because when you're in those different positions, whether you are a practice owner or you're an associate or you're a professor, what have you, whatever position you are as a woman, you still have to understand financial planning 101 and not delegate that and have a basic understanding. You might say, my spouse does it. I just go along with it. But I want to ask Brittany, because you see all of the above, what is the number one tip for all women, no matter what position they're in, when it comes to the basics of financial planning, like the number one thing?
Yeah.
Like, be specific.
Okay. Um, so I, so to your point, I do see clients and work with and have met many all over that spectrum. So from just being lifelong associates to working part-time to being partners with another female who wants to work part-time. So, and more are we seeing that there are different definitions of just the traditional business owner and or the traditional associate, right? So
Yes.
I did want to kind of clarify that. So knowing that, I think that I think a lot of people, like I said a little bit earlier, people think that I have to have this much or I have to be in control to know investing but I think a lot of it is small shifts. I tell people small little decisions can really create meaningful results. And a lot of it's learning by doing. A lot of how we learn our trades is learning by doing, right? So
Right.
an example of this is understanding, like, how does this actually work? So an example that I think probably many of us can relate to is coffee. I like my Starbucks. So stopping on my way, it's right on my way to the office. I stop at Starbucks. It's 5.50 for my vanilla latte. If I just invested that 5.50, and let's say I did that every 365 days, that's about $2,000 a year. If instead all I did was drive right past Starbucks and came to the office and had my coffee at the office, and I invested that for 40 years and earned 7% on that, right? That would be $400,000 at the end of the 40th year. So instead of a $5.50 cup of coffee, it's a $400,000 cup of coffee. If I add the pastry, it over doubles that, right? Because who goes to Starbucks without getting a pastry? I
And
definitely
especially if
don't.
you have kids.
Exactly. It's a cake pop and and
Right.
then you start
Right.
multiplying it, right?
Right.
So, and again, so it is the small little things that we can do. We can do this within our business. If we save 1% of supplies, on $1 million practice, what is that? I mean, these are meaningful dollars, right?
Yes, they are.
Little shifts and some of your lectures and some of the that I've done for you, I've talked about if we can save 4% of
Mm-hmm.
overhead on our
Mm-hmm.
business, that's $1.2 million. I mean, that's a pretty big dollar amount savings. That's
Right.
money that you can be using towards your personal lifestyle goals and or saving. So I would say, to directly answer your question, the one specific tool is understanding that small shifts and small decisions that we can make can really translate into progress. And you don't have to have it all. Now, you may very well have a husband that handles it or a parent that's handled it for you in the past. And that's completely fine. Nothing has to change on that, but really
Right.
simply just understanding how compounding works. Albert Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Um,
Absolutely. And it just
so
slips you. It's just a quiet. It's so quiet. It's an underlying current. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? And it's something that you don't realize because you're thinking it's like a little drip, right? And if you have a faucet, a leaky
A
faucet
leaky faucet. Yep.
or a
That's
shower,
right.
right? That one little drip and you don't get it fixed. How much is your water bill?
Totally.
Right? I just, I mean, in realistic terms, your story reminds me of when I was a child, younger years, my dad would say to me, because way back in the 70s and 80s, there was a huge smoking culture. You're probably too young, but I remember even for me in college, you could go to a bar and people were still smoking in a bar. And it wasn't till a little later that they said smoking's illegal in bars, like things like that. And I remember when I was younger, I would ask my dad, I'm like, my uncles smoke. How come you don't smoke? I'm just curious, right? And he goes to me, do you know how much a pack of cigarettes are? So that is the same analogy as Starbucks. And he would be like, I'm saving our family so much money by not smoking.
By not smoking.
And so I just wanted to share that because even back then, there are things in every generation that we spend money on that's leaking from our wallets, whether it's smoking, whether it's drinking coffee, whatever that little habit could be. And I mean, gamers, right? Like when they're on their like whatever Nintendo, whatever game they're buying, like my kids want to play Roblox. I'm like,
Or
no more.
device. I know.
Yeah, like, and it's like a 29, 20 cents for this and a 50 cents for this. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's going to come out of your little piggy bank there. And you'll see how much money you're bleeding.
I have to jump in because this literally happened with us the other day. My Sirius XM for my car came up for renewal. And I was like, I'm paying how much for this? And I thought, you know what? I listen to Spotify. I don't even use it. So
Hmm.
I went, you have to go online and specifically speak to someone to cancel. So this was at like
Hmm.
10 p.m. at night. So I'm messaging with this woman or probably a bot, right? And
Yeah.
and this bot is like, what price would you like to pay for this? And I said, nothing. I just need to cancel it. And they said, if we offered this to you for like $5.99 a month, would that be okay? And I was like, no, I still don't want to do it. Anyways, it ended up being that it went from, I think it was like $40 a month to $2.99 a month. And I said, well, I guess I'll keep it for that. But it's that I didn't even know.
Right.
And so my husband was telling me that through things like he used an app called Rocket Money, you can actually negotiate that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying we need to be nickel and diming ourselves, but it's just being conscientious of stuff in this subscription-based society. A
Yes,
lot of
yes,
stuff is
yes,
auto renew, and it's a lot of stuff that you don't even realize you're doing. In our
yes,
practices, it can tend to be things like merchant processing fees. A lot of times,
yes,
those get raised without us realizing. We renegotiate,
yes,
and then 2 years later, we have to do it again. So
yes.
it's smart little decisions like that that end up getting you the things that you need to get to your goals.
Absolutely. I mean, last night I put on a webinar about finances and financials and where you could be losing money. And I think in every business you can find money. You really can. It's finding the money that's going to move the needle. I'm not talking about little dollars. I'm talking about massive amounts of dollars. And so I think that if you are a practice owner, you really need to investigate that and really look into, as a CEO, where you're leaking the money. And it could be anything from not getting enough patients on the books, or the recall system's not working, or you're behind, there's cancellations, etc. So you have to dig into that. But moving back to our list of questions here, for listeners who feel cautious about investing, right now there's a lot of volatility. How do you help your clients mentally prepare? Because honestly, Brittany, this whole volatility in the market, going back, this is going on for years, years,
Mhm.
and you can't. I would say the past 2 to 3 years, the volatility has been more erratic, and it's not as predictable. And there are people who are nervous about investing. Like, what do you tell them?
Yeah, so I first say that there is a lot of anxiety around investing is actually normal. Okay. anytime we talk about money, there's going to be emotions, especially when you introduce the media and things like that. But if you think about it, reacting emotionally and short-term speculation and things like that is really not what we're trying to do. So what I call this my life hack when I'm talking with clients or when I'm out speaking. And I talk about separating things like the things that we can control and the things that we cannot. Okay. What we cannot control is what you're saying, the high levels of volatility that are driven by anything from tweets to global geopolitical unrest to global policies and inflation and those kinds of things. Those are things that we cannot control. What we can control is how much we save, how much we spend, how we invest it, and making sure that we have, first of all, being tax efficient and those kinds of things, but also are we invested according to what our goals are? So I talk about investing with a purpose. Is each bucket of money that I have invested as it should be for whatever that intentional goal is? So if I need this bucket of money, I'm not going to invest it in the highly volatile stock market. If I need it in the next 2 to 3 years or in the next 6 months, right? But if this is a longer term bucket, I can stand a level of ups and downs and market fluctuations. So understanding that we really can't control the elections and the interest rates and all of that stuff, or what our president's going to tweet, or what any of that, and how the market reacts to that. What we can control is what we have and what accounts we have it, and what are we planning for that money.
Right.
I always describe every dollar should have a purpose.
Right.
And all of the dollars together don't just have one purpose. When you look at it together, that is our overall portfolio, our overall wealth, but each piece of it should have a different purpose. So if we stick to go bring it back to your question, if you're worried about that, make sure you're investing with purpose and with intention, and you understand what you're investing in. And then if you do, I think you worry a lot less about all the other stuff that typically feeds our emotions.
Absolutely. And
So
speaking of, like I feel that this conversation about investing, listeners, you have to realize as a dentist, it's not just investing dollars, it's investing your time, investing your energy. At some point, those two, money and time, have a relationship. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you're better off. And when you go back to your practice and you're thinking, I have a finite number of hours I'm working today. Let's just say 7 hours. You're going to see patients for 7 hours. What are you doing during those 7 hours with your patients? If you are smart, right, and we're talking dollars, time, you're thinking about how to maximize your 7 hours, right? Okay, well, if I see pediatric hygiene patients all day and do their cleanings, how much money are you going to make in 7 hours? Versus, I'm going to be doing implant surgery all day and I'll be doing some Invisalign. How much money are you making in those 7 hours, right? And so I'm making this analogy because the dentists who are listening, that's what they understand. They understand chair time, they understand procedure and the value and the dollars that come with it, minus the overhead, right? But would you rather spend 7 hours doing prophies all day, or would you rather spend 7 hours doing this all day to maximize, right? Because everybody has the same number of hours. No one can ever get their hour back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So what are you doing? And that's where I want Brittany to use that analogy on investing and putting money in your retirement and how that analogy relates to the length of time.
sure. So actually, what you're talking about is what we call our productivity formula, our profitability formula. So it's the number of visits times the production per visit, and making sure that you're intentional about what is in that day. So a lot of
Right.
practice is scheduled to production, and making sure that you're filling the holes and making sure that you hit those numbers. Because to your point, if I'm doing hygiene checks all day or whatever it is, then that might not be. I might not get to where I need to be, and that time was maybe better spent or better distributed a different way. So to directly relate that, it's similar in investing because timing and time in the market are two different things. Uh,
Right.
Again, back to the conversation of emotions, and how we look at that in investing. Time in the market is making sure that we are being intentional about setting it, adjusting it if we need to, right? Like your production adjustments to get to where you need to be, and then letting it run, right? And not letting it interrupt with the different cancellations and other things that we have and trying to work people in, and then we mess up the whole schedule, but also trying to serve the patient as well. On your analogy, on our side, it's easy. Staying invested is almost always the best answer unless you're invested in the wrong type of things. But when you start to try to time the market and pull in and out and time it right based on it's going down or it's coming up, that can actually dramatically reduce and be a detriment to how much you actually accumulate in wealth in the long term. Because the best days in the market actually usually happen right after the worst. And it's almost impossible to time that. And even if someone says, when I get challenged once in a while in the consult room and somebody says, well, I know, and I know this, and I know that, you don't. You really don't.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's going to happen. And so you might hit it big, but you probably won't.
Yeah.
And so understanding that just staying in is probably the best answer. Again, assuming that you've got things planned out in the right vehicles at
Right.
the right time.
Right.
So anyways, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I did because I just want to make sure that people understand if listeners don't really understand what investing is or what they need to be doing, investing is a very big term. And underneath that word investing is like a big umbrella. And then there's a lot of different ways to invest. And I just want to make sure that women are investing in their retirement plans because I think that's kind of where things slide. But I also think it's important, to plan for the worst case scenario. If you're relying on your spouse, what happens if your spouse loses their job? What happens if your spouse gets disabled? There's a lot of what ifs. And through my lifetime, and even amongst my patients, I have seen couples where all of a sudden the wife, whether they're working or not, have zero knowledge of finances have to now shoulder that and burden like carry that load and then it's a big surprise. And so having financial literacy, which we've talked about as a dentist, is really important because tying it back to like the dental practice, whether you're an associate or you're an owner, you should always be saving and you should also be like taking chunks of money and putting it away. And I think that again, I don't know who's listening, whether we have students, whether we have younger people, whether we have older people, starting with that, then I would say the next step after that is if you have children, right? How to start, you have to start thinking about their education, right? Opening up a 529. Or if you're beyond that, there's all these little tools that you can do, like even with the 529, right? Like for more, I guess, advanced or for doctors who have kids that you have maxed or not maxed out, but you're contributing to their 529. And let's just say they end up in college you can, I have read that you can use your 529. Like, let's say you bought a condo for them and it has like multiple bedrooms. And let's say they find roommates and now they're your tenants, but your child can use their 529 money to pay for rent for school and that counts.
That's right.
It's not just tuition.
It's the equivalent of on-campus housing. That's right. You can absolutely use that.
Right. And so I just want to point out for listeners, that's part of financial planning.
Oh,
It's not just, oh, investing in a stock. Like that's
no.
not what we're talking about here.
And what we're talking about is it's all comprehensive. It's a big puzzle, and every piece of the puzzle has a place. And oftentimes, it's about changing out pieces of the puzzle and or optimizing the puzzle to make it look
Right.
better, to make it fit better, and that evolves over our life cycle as well. To your point, and it looks different for everybody. But the point is, financial planning is and should be comprehensive. To your point, a lot of people look at just my practice or just my W-2 wages or just my investment accounts. It's not just anything. It's all, and that's kind of why we do what we do with a comprehensive approach, because it all ties in. I mean, we could bring in the whole conversation of estate planning and how this actually really is. Estate planning is one of the most important things. If we're
100%.
worried about, our kids and our legacy and what we're going to leave them and how are we going to leave it to them? Are we going to protect it from them, from creditors, from, all the
Right.
things that we want to make sure of. A lot of times we live in the now, but aren't looking at the back end as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just want to say that I'm just assuming that people listening are either right at the very beginning or in the middle, or they're not experts, but like really well planned with their planners, and wanting to point out that financial planning isn't just about putting money in this, money market account or a mutual fund, or,
That's right.
it's talking about where is your money going in all the buckets. And if you don't know where all the buckets are, you just don't know what you don't know. And so I think as dentists, to be fiscally responsible, and I mean not just paying your taxes and paying your employees, being a good steward of all your money means, yeah, you could try to white knuckle it and DIY it, but having someone as an expert back you and say, we have 1,000 dentists as clients. This is what we're doing. Versus you as a one off trying to figure it out by yourself, you might be missing out on a lot of good things that a planner can do for you because you're cheaping out. And I think when it comes to money, you shouldn't cheap out. Like, this is a really big deal. Next to the decision of having $1 million loan. I mean, if you have $1 million loan, you better have some
You
financial
probably need
planning.
someone to, right? Exactly. That's right.
Um, but I mean, looking ahead, I mean, I know that listeners want to have a specific relationship. I think when it comes to money, people get funny,
Funny.
right?
Very funny.
So it's really important to find that right relationship. So how do you build the right relationship with your financial planner? How are you, like, what kind of client do you have? Like, what I guess is your community of dentists like?
Yeah. So, like as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we can and we do work with all types of dentists, and whereas our model and our business has evolved as the
Yeah.
industry has evolved. We also work with DSO owners and or clients that have sold to DSOs and or DSO associates. We work with obviously the private practices is a huge piece of what we do. But I have we have as a firm, and I have clients that are just associates, W-2 employees, and full on multi-location practice owners and kind of everything in between. And my planning, the framework is the exact same for them. And what we do at Cain Watters intentionally is the whole core of what we do is trying to get our clients to where they want to be personally, professionally, and financially. And
Yeah.
everything that we do comes back to those goals. So to your point, what are we talking about with our advisors? How are we communicating with them? It's making sure that you're having those conversations of what are, first of all, the conversations with your spouses and with your families of what are our goals. I kind of break it down into the purpose-driven wealth framework. I felt it
Yes.
was really easy to kind of say, okay, first of all, wealth doesn't always mean financial wealth, right?
Right,
Of
right,
course, we want our clients to be well prepared and to kind of be able to survive in the future and those kinds of things. But everybody's definition of wealth is different.
right,
And so defining your goals, mapping out your plan. I think that's really where, how am I going to get there? I think that's where an
right.
advisor can really help. I talked about it earlier, the things we can control, the things that we cannot. Control what you can, forget about all the other stuff because honestly, you can't do anything about it. It
Sure.
matters, but if you've got your plan mapped out, it doesn't really matter because you've got everything planned for intentionally with purpose. And
Mhm.
and you be accountable to the plan, right? You've set, what are my spending goals and what am I doing here? And am I going to save what I need to save? And, all of those things. And so this is where an advisor can really come in and help. Um, And then the last piece of it is adjusting. I'm not saying you set it and go, which a lot of
Right.
advisors do. Um,
Right.
the good ones don't, right? You don't want that. Like it needs to be adjusted. Things change. You change, your goals change, the markets change, life changes. So we have to adjust for those curveballs.
A
And I
hundred
think if
percent.
you use that purpose-driven wealth framework, it makes this way less intimidating, but you apply that to all phases, wherever you are, from starting out to all the way to completely, fully financially free and retired. By the way, I didn't mention this, but I also work with plenty of retired clients as well.
Yes.
Um,
That's
so
good to know
I forgot to
because,
tell you on the back end, if you have listeners
but
are there too. I mean, it matters
yes,
then too. Actually, it
yes,
matters then
it
equally
matters
as much, if
more.
not more,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
only have this, and
So
how you
much.
pull it from
Right.
each of the vehicles can help with tax efficiencies and making sure your
So,
money lasts.
my question also, like as you were explaining all of this, is that for dentists who are in the practice, right, and who are like on the verge of retiring, I mean, their runway is shorter, right? So your methodologies of saving, investing are
Mhm.
going to be different and
Right.
implemented differently or modified. And so again, foresight is really important here because as they say, hindsight's 2020. You don't want to say
Mm-mm.
hindsight's
Mm-mm.
2020.
We don't we don't
No.
want that. No, exactly. And the beauty is we can actually be if you with those kind of phasing down or kind of on
Mhm,
the
mhm.
fun part of their lives or the
Yeah.
free part of their lives. It applies to those, but really to anyone, but really looking at risk tolerance. And a
Hmm.
lot of that is driven by time horizon and liquidity needs.
Hmm.
Even for those clients, a lot of times it's like, well, should I be all in bond? I'm retiring next year. And I'm like, well, hold on. You're going to have shorter term cash flow needs in the next,
Right.
1 to 3 years. And then you're going to have some other buckets of money that are going to be invested a little bit differently. And then you're going to have that longer term bucket. You're not dying when you retire, remember. So we still have a whole new kind of time horizon and strategy. But yes, for those clients, we're looking at yield and do they have rental properties where they can get income from? When do they claim Social Security? How are they pulling from their 401ks and their Roth IRAs and their taxable investment accounts? Using things like 529s that have been overfunded. What are we doing with those? Can we spend some of that
Hmm.
for qualified purposes, or are we going to pass those down? So there's a lot of stuff that we can do there.
There's a
Um,
lot. I mean,
and
the list is long,
Mhm.
And I also want to ask you for those common questions I hear that come up in the Facebook page are, does your planner help you with planning within the business? Like, let's say they're trying to figure out if they can afford an associate, or they're trying to figure out if they can afford this big piece of equipment, let's say a CBCT, right? Or a big laser.
Mhm.
Are you helping dental practice owners in that way as well? Because I do think those things are an investment, right? Because an extra associate, in my opinion, is an investment because it's going to help you either scale or if you're like, I'm tired and I need to step down a little bit, so investment in that way. But then also buying a cone beam is an investment. Buying a laser is an investment. And so again, that word investment is a loose term and an umbrella term, but are you helping dental practices map that out?
Oh, absolutely. That is most practice owners, and and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but own practices to achieve a purpose, right? This is not, you obviously most love what they do and they want to make sure that their patients are taken well care of and they're going to do it in the best possible way, but it is a means to achieve some other goal, right?
Right.
And some of that might be, a philanthropic goal or some maybe financial goal, a life goal, giving me the balance that I need but yes, absolutely. I mean, an associate is an absolutely, great investment, as long as the financial, implications of it make sense. So we have all sorts of um, ways of analyzing this as far as break evens and what do we need to be feeding that associate and how are they going to, grow their patient base?
Mhm.
Are we in network? Are we completely fee for service? What does that look like? And 100%. I mean, most of our clients, that's many of our clients, I mean, that's their livelihood is their business. And
Yeah.
if, somebody tells me I need an associate, not because my numbers say so, but I'm burned out.
Yeah.
I say, you bring in that associate because you need to, first of all, you need to be okay personally and making sure that you're meeting those personal goals. But also you need, we've all, based on your other financial goals, you need to work for longer. So, we need to make sure that you can sustain this level. So a lot of the conversation I've had with clients is burnout and so a lot of times it's making sure that we're not making stupid financial decisions, right? Or unplanned, but is preparing for those things. I foresee I need this. With regards to capital expenditures, I mean, absolutely, you have to invest in your business to become more productive, to serve your patients in the best way, to again get you to one of those goals that you have, many of which are financials. But it's sort of like invest in your business, invest in yourself a little bit. And you have to do that in different ways to get to where you want to be. Certainly investing into accounts, into products and into mutual funds and those kinds of things is a component of that. But investing is a very broad term to your point.
Yeah.
And it is a big piece of the purpose-driven wealth puzzle that we talk about.
Well, I definitely think, like you said, it's a puzzle, right? And in my mind, there's like, I think of like a flywheel or like a map, right? And there's a lot of spokes to the wheel and like a bubble map. And honestly, everyone's map's going to look different and everyone's journey is going to be different. And I think finding the right planner is going to be a wise decision and it will produce you want to produce a maximum output. And so the sooner you're planning, the better it is for you. And it's kind of hard sometimes to see that, right? Just as it's just like it's hard to see that you could spend all that money in Starbucks, it's also really hard to see how much money you'll have at the end. Like it's like a rainbow and then there's a pot of
hmm
gold at the end, right? It's like you're following that rainbow, but you're not sure what that pot of gold is going to look like.
I know I sound like a super financial nerd, but in all of this, I get really excited. But it's so cool to be able to show a client, hey, look where you were 5 years ago, and
Yes.
look where when you first came in, and then look where you are right now, and look where I'm thinking or I'm projecting that you're going to be here.
Yeah.
This set you up for a whole different. So if bringing on an associate or buying the piece of equipment or whatever it is, like, you know what? If you want to buy that Starbucks, you better buy that Starbucks. I'm not saying not to buy it. If that's what makes you happy and keeps you going, you go for it. It's all about, I think an advisor has to understand that this is a tailored approach to you, to your
Right.
goals, to your family. There is absolutely no one size fits all. And if someone tells you there is, you're in the wrong place.
Right.
Because
Right.
really, so sometimes when a new client comes in and works with me, how does this work? I'm like, well, how do you want it to work? Here's what, generally happens, but
Yep.
how often do you want to talk? How involved do you need me to be? Sometimes people just want check-ins and can handle things. Sometimes I'm like in the details and all in the, so it really is a personalized approach. Some people, a lot of my clients, are like, well, I don't care. I just want you to tell me what to do and do it. And I'm like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
We are going to understand. I'm going to give you all the tools you need to understand so that when you're 10 years down the road, you don't wonder, why did I do this? Or what am I
Right.
doing?
Right.
So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
that
Yes. Yes.
education piece that you talked about.
Yes.
And is understanding it to start. So anyways, hopefully that hit some of the points you wanted to.
No, it definitely does. And I think that it's so good to understand. And it is very it's very juicy. And in the beginning when you work with a financial planner, it is there's a heavy upload, right? Like there's a lot of work to do in the beginning, like handing over information and getting the plan down. But
Oh
once
yeah.
you're in motion, once the ball's rolling, it gets less time intensive. So listeners, I'm just grateful for you all to be a part of our community. And, Brittany's part of our community and she's part of our hive. And we have, we've been blessed by her knowledge and wisdom to share with all of you. And as you know, Brittany is a busy mom, working mom and professional. She's got 3 children. Brittany, these days, you know what? This question and the answer changes every so often.
It does.
How are you now finding balance, or are you finding balance
Ha,
between
balance. That's
everything you're
very funny.
doing, right, and your children?
very funny. Sometimes there's balance in the imbalance, right? But last week, a week ago today, my 2.5-year-old daughter broke her arm to kick off summer. So that was
Oh,
super fun. She jumped on top of the boys, told them to get down. She went catapulting. It was my idea of balance very much changed in that moment.
sure.
So I've kind of just realized that it's not in the perfection, it's in the adjustment when the curveballs come to you. This is how I find balance in every aspect of my life these days. I have to
Yeah.
adapt. I have to smile. If
Yeah.
everybody's where they need to be and,
Yeah.
fed and taken care of and loved, I think we've won, right?
Oh
um,
gosh,
you know,
absolutely. And there are
and
days where you're gonna win, and there are days you're
uh-huh.
not. And I think that's
And
just the
I've also found that like one day I feel like I've totally hit it hard at work and I've won. I am like, this is great. I am so good at what I do. And then I go home and I'm like, oh Lord, I am not,
yeah,
I'm a terrible this, or I'm a
yeah,
terrible mom, or a terrible wife. And then the next day it's the opposite. And so sometimes, and then the often, not so often, but when the ones happen where you're all aligned, great. But my
right.
idea of balance is like I said, I mean, I think it's the perfectly imperfect, right? And I
Yes.
think living in that as a type A perfectionist CPA financial advisor, it's a little hard to do that, but I've kind of embraced it, and I think that that
Mm.
helps provide a lot of peace of mind, and that I am doing the right things
Right, right,
for
right.
the right reasons, and that's what I can do. Those are,
Yeah,
again, back to that framework, silly,
right.
but the things I can control, I'm doing what I can control.
I love that. Well, thank you for being with us. And for listeners, if you do want to reach out to Cain Waters, you can go to their website, and that would be,
www.cainwaters.com
yeah. How do
slash
you,
info, backslash info.
okay,
And it's CAINWATTERS.
two T's.
Two T's.
All right. Got it. Well, thank you again, Brittany, and I hope to see you soon. And for listeners, I just want to let you know there's only 4 seats left at the Social Summit. If you plan on coming to Washington, D.C., Georgetown, we will be at the Fairmont. It's a gorgeous hotel. We've got so many fun things planned, and I'd love for you to be there. I just really hope that you have figured out your schedules, because I know a lot of us were moms. We're waiting for our kids' college schedules and high school schedules. They are all out now, and I don't want you to miss out. Please join us. 4 seats left. And if you want to come to our CEO roundtable, cohort B is next in Nashville. It is sold out, but 2 weeks after that, first weekend of February, cohort C, we have 6 seats left. So if you, and that's not until next year, February. So if you would like to, and you're an official, that event is mandatory to be an official member, but the social summit, it's not mandatory. Anyone can come. So please join us. You can find that information on our website, or always DM or email us. And on that note, everyone be well. And I hope that you will find time, because to make money work for you. You make time to make money, make it work for you. All right. Take care now. Bye, everyone.